So, with looking at the multi-systems lens of theory of development, we take a look at family. Back then, when my interviewee was talking about the times of his life, the man again was supposed to work and provide, and that's all that they were responsible for. And I think in today's society, we have really gotten away from that. And I think that if it was a lot different back then. Maybe if we didn't have the man responsible for working, I think maybe the crisis that has happened in our interviewee's life might not have been so pronounced um, with regards to the death of his children and how his children um, made the choices that they made. When we take a look at our community is heavily involved with women. I know for myself, I am really involved in my community with being an officer in my little league and being a second grade CCD teacher. So, I still take care of those community aspects, and I take care of my children and my home. But I do tend to think that men do get involved more along the lines with the community these days, especially with men raising children more and more every day. With our institutions, for him, unfortunately, his children were unable to take part in anything that our institutions um, offered in terms of baseball and football and soccer. They were heavy into religion. They did take part in their church and CCD classes and confirmation classes. So in that aspect of community and heavily into their culture, they were involved in that. But even though the man was able to provide a really good income, it still was not enough to be able to take part in those other institutions, as in sports and dance classes. One of the things that was really awesome as doing the research was I heavily believe in this, that allowing children to succeed and fail on their own is a big factor in how they are going to grow up, but also making sure that they know to be humble, to not have unrealistic ideals of themselves. We're probably never going to be a Kate Middleton or a Megan. We're probably never going to be a princess. So, making sure that our children understand that that is something that is very minute happening, I think is very important to our children, but making sure they understand that it is okay to fail. I definitely promote that in my own children. It's okay to get an F on a test as long as you tried. You might not understand everything, and that might not be the class that you do your best in. So I think that that's good. Unfortunately, um, with these children, they were allowed to have unrealistic ideals of themselves, and that does come through, unfortunately, with his daughter, where she did have the unrealistic ideals that she didn't have to work, and someone was going to always be there to take care of her and pay for her and provide for her. And I think that's where she saw a lot with her father. Her father was there to always provide. Um, so, with comparison to the theories, I looked at ecological theory, and I feel that this is the closest thing that I could find to mimic what has been going on in my interviewee's life, where we look at adaptation. The family unfortunately did not adapt to him going out and providing for the family and being on the road 6, 7 days a week sometimes. So their adaptation of that and keeping that home tight and ready to go when the father was able to be home, I don't think that that went off, and their coping skills and their coping mechanisms um, really weren't fostered enough where they chose to use drugs and alcohol to cope with dad not being at home. Mom coped with, dealing with her kids through becoming their friends instead of hammering down and being more part of being more mom, and saying that this was unacceptable because unfortunately mom also got involved with using substances along the lines with her own children. So when we take a look at the micro and meso and exo and macro levels, there are massive forces going on with our interviewee. The homeschool and work, it just didn't work out in a positive light for them, especially early on. Um, Home was a mess because dad wasn't home. The kids really didn't take part in school, although they did graduate from high school. They really didn't further their education like their dad did, and mom also did not further her education. So no one really had that higher education and or a push to get the higher education. Um, Work also, mainly the father did the work. Even the children did not go out and pursue their work careers. They were so heavily involved with drugs and alcohol that that became more along the lines of their work to sustain themselves, whether they had to deal or whether they had to go on welfare or disability, unfortunately, due to the fact that they were using substances. And home versus work, it always was a clash. There was always an issue. My interviewee always said that, they wanted him to be home, but unfortunately, he was the only one who was able to provide for the food on the table and to keep the house over their heads. So it was in that meso section there. It was always a clash. Um, there was a point, my interviewee said, where um, he did try to get off the roads. He started working in business. He started working in real estate and investing in real estate. But unfortunately, that wasn't enough to keep food on the table. It really didn't pay well. So that workplace and business environment and home still clashed for them. And then at that macro level, the cultural beliefs, man worked, and you know, their religious beliefs and values kind of trumped over those economic forces, but unfortunately they backfired. The values where you earn a good dollar did not funnel through down to the four children. And my interviewee also has that big regret for them and for his children. So the limitations of Erickson's theory, I feel that there are a couple of them, especially in today's society. Erickson's limitations does not account for other aspects of life of being a success, especially in today's society. My interviewee is very successful. He does help people out. And again, I said I was surprised that he didn't focus on this theory and this part, the integrity versus despair, the eighth step, because he is enjoying his life finally, and he is taking what he has learned through his life and helping others and trying to teach them. And I know he has done it a couple times for myself. This theory also looks as relationships. If you're not in one, you're a failure. And if you are in one, you're a success. Today's society, we don't have that. In today's society, I think that stage six barely exists in our ever changing society. Positive progress through crises strengthens that ego. Again, my interviewee definitely sees that he is very strong. He has a lot of strength in this aspect of his life and this stage of his development. I think that his integrity is very strong. I see that just with the interview itself, that he allowed himself to be a part of this interview. So I do want to thank him for doing this. And I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful holiday. And congratulations to everyone in the class. And here are my references that I used throughout my course. And thank you very much, Professor. And I really enjoyed this class.